Hello, Andrew. How are you doing? I hope that you're doing well and that you're ready to receive this reading, which I'm really excited about, because as you know, I haven't done this before. I haven't tried reading someone's left and right palm at the same time. And I found some really interesting things, some really interesting connections here with your palms that I'm going to be talking about. So let's just jump right into it because we have a lot of things to talk about. First of all, when I do a palm reading, I like to look at the shape of the hand first. And even though the photo might be a little bit distorted, so the perspective might make a minor difference, I still see your palm as bigger than the fingers. And what that means is that you have the fire hand type. But correct me if I'm wrong, and then I'm gonna give you the information about the actual hand type that you have. But I have the strong suspicion that you are the fire hand type. So, like I said, bigger palm area, slightly shorter fingers, and as you know, the fire element in astrology refers to a very passionate, very energetic, dynamic sort of energy. And the shape of your hand is kind of like the base, the core personality that you have. And given that you are a fire hand type, I would say that that indicates a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of high energy, and curiosity towards life. An action-minded person, someone who, although with your headline, we will see that you're a very much focused on intellectual matters, but at the same time, your core personality is driven by an action-oriented approach. So you don't like to stay on the abstract level or just experiment with things in a theoretical way. You like to really get down to it and to really experience life and the adventures that it offers. And you're also striving towards having a good empirical understanding of life. So it's telling me that you tend to really focus on testing your theories instead of just thinking about them. And you have the ability to inspire other people with your high energy and your optimism. And I think that's a really good thing. So what I'm going to do in terms of the tarot reading is we're going to look at 3 important aspects in both palms, the left and the right. We're going to look at the heart line and the headline. And also, this is really interesting because I've never seen this before. You have an intertwined lifeline and fate line. So I kind of lumped those 2 lines together because I have the feeling that there's a really strong interaction between those 2 lines. It's almost inseparable. And And so we're going to draw one card for the left and the right for each of these three aspects. And then I would also like to draw a card for the conclusion of the reading, a card to give us a direction or an idea on how you can balance these different tendencies, how you can integrate things that are perhaps unseen or in the subconscious, and how you can make the best use of this reading. So, I would first like to talk about the heart line. So, the heart line is indicative of your emotional attitudes, of your empathy, of your way of connecting with others. And what I see in the right hand and the left hand is that they are pretty similar. The left hand side is slightly shorter, and but they are both curved upwards, which means that you are very empathetic, imaginative. You find it easy to connect with other people's emotions, but you don't get drawn into other people's drama or other people's negative emotional energies, because both of these lines, in the left hand and in the right hand, are pretty straightforward without any significant breakages or any islands or chains in them. And that means that you tend to dominate when it comes to relationships. So you take charge, and you are the person who shows the way, who guides the other person. And that definitely doesn't mean manipulation in any way, because like I said, this upward curve does not only indicate a good empathetic ability, but it also indicates trustworthiness and a general sense of optimism when it comes to connecting with others on an emotional level. Now, what I found interesting is that in your left palm, we have a sort of deeper beginning here, and that can indicate early childhood trauma, something that happened in the beginning of your life, something that you're carrying in your non-dominant hand, something that is pushed down into the subconscious, but it's the basis of your emotional sensitivity. And since the line itself is really deep, not only in the right hand but also in the left hand, that means that you may find it difficult to recover from emotional stress or trauma that happens to you along the way, because you experience these things really deeply. And I found this kind of curious, because the image that I have of you, or this idea that I have of you, of course we've never met, I only know you through our readings, is that you are a very strongly intellect-based person. But this is also, this heart line is telling me about your sensitive side, that you you are someone who experiences these emotional matters very deeply. But like I said, since this is kind of like the ideal ending point for a hard line between the middle and the index finger, and here it's almost the same, it's only slightly shorter. So it indicates someone who's really mature and reliable and stable when it comes to the emotional side of things. Now, the headline is kind of interesting because here I see a bigger difference, a significant difference between the two lines in the left hand and the right hand. So in the left hand, we have this middle line is the headline, and the headline indicates your way of thinking, your general attitude to life, your wisdom, your ability to learn, and your ability to communicate with others and to be receptive to new ideas. So the headline in the left hand is longer, and it's more balanced, and it's going more upwards. So there's a deep-seated optimism that I see with this, a kind of unbreakable faith in life and in your own abilities. But this is in the left hand, in the non-dominant hand. But the right hand is really kind of strange because it's so short and it ends in a really big fork, or I'm not sure what it's called, but as you can see, it breaks into two lines at the end. And what a short headline means is that you tend to be practical when it comes to thinking about any subject. So you're very drawn to pragmatic solutions and pragmatic thinking. However, I see a contradiction here, because this branch going upwards, touching the heart line, indicates a sort of idealism, a sort of high expectancy of yourself and others, almost unrealistic in a way. But this branch, this opening branch, also indicates a person who is really interested in debating things. So you don't just accept things, even if it comes to your own ideas. You always like to offer them up for debate, for discussion. And there's a lack of agreeableness that I'm sensing here on your right hand. But the left hand side is much more agreeable, much less radical, much less confrontational. So there are these deep hidden patterns of wanting to please others. A lawyer's fork, this big fork in the middle. So you definitely have an ability to do that, but there's something else going on in the subconscious at the same time. So that's interesting. We're going to be looking into that. Now, with the lifeline and the fate line situation, like I said, I've never seen this happen. They are crossing one another, and it's pretty much the same pattern in both hands, with the exception that in the left hand, the fate line and the lifeline as well, they're both going really, really long, and they start from the wrist. So I see this as your potential, and the right hand is what you're actually utilizing from that. So you have way more potential in this area, which is the fate line represents your career, your purpose in life, and the lifeline represents your general vitality, your motivation, your health. And so these two things being intertwined, I see this as a struggle, as a kind of a defiant, let me just look at my notes for a second because I don't want to forget about anything important. So there's some resistance and pressure, and what I'm seeing here in the left hand, first of all, on the fate line, there's an island here right at the beginning of the palm, and from what I've gathered, it could indicate a difficult birth or some kind of difficulty in early childhood, some unusual situation in your childhood that left a mark. And I think that we can make this connection with the heart line as well, because we have this pretty much the same situation going on here. So the fate line and the lifeline, for that matter, they both stop at the headline, and that indicates a lack of willingness to accept rules and a reluctance to be controlled, especially in a working situation. And I think I found that to be really believable, because I know you, and I know that you really don't like being oppressed by the system, and I think that is reflected in this lifeline fate line situation. And so, with the getting back to the topic of the lifeline and the fate line being intertwined, it indicates a lot of struggle, because it seems like there's pressure coming from external sources that are almost standing in your way. But your lifeline and your fate line partially merging like that, make you have a really serious relationship with your own life purpose, and you're willing to take on these challenges, and you're willing to choose the more difficult route. And but you're not really utilizing all this strength that is presented in the left palm, because an extremely strong fate line that ends with the headline indicates a great charisma. So you could have a lot more convincing power, a lot more power over people if you wanted to, because the long fate line indicates someone who's really hardworking and has the potential to be popular or famous. So I found that interesting. But here in the right hand, we have how should I say this? A shorter, not much shorter, but somewhat shorter fate and lifeline. And that's telling me that you're not really taking advantage of these talents, of these tendencies that are represented by the left hand. So let's ask the tarot. I have my tarot of the New Vision deck here. So let's ask the tarot on some advice on how you could make the best of your hidden abilities and how you can integrate trauma. So I'm going to do a little more shuffling. Okay. All right. So the first card for the heart line, left palm, and right palm. Headline, left palm, and right palm. Lifeline, fate line situation, left palm. And right palm. And the final conclusion. Okay. Heart line, left palm, right palm. Interesting. Okay. Headline. Okay, that's really interesting. I think the Page of Cups is coming up. I think maybe this is the second time it's in an important position in a reading that I've done with you. So we have two major arcana cards, Death and the Magician. Really good cards, powerful cards. And we have 3 swords, 1 pentacles, and the Page of Cups, of course. So let's talk about the heart line first. Oh, and we have this one in reverse, the King of Swords in reverse. So the Death card for the left hand strong feeling that that probably from early childhood you had to make yourself accept a lot of things, accept loss of people, loss of love perhaps, and you have this really, really strong connection with the transformative qualities of the Death card. You have a strong ability to let go, and that might come from this traumatic beginning that I talked about regarding your heart line in the left palm. And the Death card is highly spiritual. It's a very, very intense card, and It reminds me of this saying. I think it's an old Chinese saying that you can only see clearly if your eyes have tears in them. So if you had cried enough, if you had suffered enough, if you know pain, if you know what it is like to experience pain and loss and trauma, that's when you become really open, and that's when you can acquire a level of wisdom. And what I see in the right hand with the King of Swords reversed is actually very positive. I think that swords cards can be a very kind of unpleasant and nasty when it comes to emotional things. And the first thing that came to my mind when I saw the King of Swords in reverse was the ability to put your judgments aside. And this might be something that you're still struggling with, but I have the feeling that you are on the right path. And this is one of the major lessons, or the major pieces of wisdom that you carry with you, that when it comes to emotions, when it comes to intimate relationships, it's important to be less rational, to be less calculating, and less interested in being fair, less interested in the idea of justice, because that's not what really brings people closer together. That's not the point. And I think since you have been hurt and you know what it's like to lose something or someone, you have this deep understanding and this deep intuitive knowledge of how to handle relationships that are important to you in a way that is not too restrictive, not too strict, but still fair. But it's not the focal point of a relationship to always try to find out who's right and who's wrong, to always focus on objective truth. It's more important to put those thoughts aside and to really turn to the other person with an emptiness that is not a negative emptiness. It's more of an openness, a welcoming, receptive, spacious mindset, where you're able to listen to the other person because you have been purified. You have gone through your own challenges and your own difficulties in life that made you much more connected to your core, much more connected to the fragile nature of life and of existence. So you can take this as an advice as well, but I think that you already know this and you're already working on this, working on creating this balance. And this is deeply supported by your own experiences, by your own background and your subconscious processes. Moving on to the headline. This is really interesting because we have the 3 of Swords and the 5 of Swords. And And I just want to refer back to what I wrote about the headline. I really see a deep sense of disappointment, and I think it comes from what I told you here, with this trying to be pragmatic and practical and action based in your thinking, but at the same time having these ideals, these high expectations of other people, and having this conflict of having a really uncomplicated, simple Occam's razor kind of perspective on things, but being confronted with the insanity and the irrational nature of other people's thinking. So we have the Three of Swords for the left hand, and I'm reinforced in thinking that this headline represents a kind of shying away from confrontation because of trauma. And this is a different kind of trauma than with the Death card, because the Death card goes really deep and it cuts to the core. The Three of Swords is more intellectual, and it's more ego-based, if you want. So there's a deep tendency to want to run away from conflict and to want to agree with people, because not agreeing and not conforming to other people's ideas is painful. And there's a level of fear concerning that. On the other hand, the Five of Swords for your conscious decisions and what you're actually doing with your life, it shows a different picture. Here you are more willing to go against the flow and more interested in improving that you are right. And this can lead to a lot of conflict. And since both your fate line and your lifeline end at the headline, I think that even though both of these cards for the life and the fate line are very powerful, very dynamic, very positive, I think that the headline, your way of thinking, represents trouble, represents to work with other people when it comes to your way of thinking, because you just think so differently from others, and you have all these subconscious forces pulling you in the direction of wanting to agree, wanting to be accepted, but your conscious decisions and your conscious mind is still combative and still wants to pursue what's right in your opinion. So I think the resolution to the headline situation will be found in this integration card. So anyway, let's take a look at the fate line headline situation. For the left palm, we have the Magician, and that is telling me that I wasn't wrong when I concluded from looking at your fate and lifeline that that you have a lot more potential than what you're using at the moment. And the thing about the Magician is that it represents the highest level of personal will, the highest level of basically doing magic, creating something out of nothing. And you have this great talent of, like I said, convincing people, of drawing people in, of being a leader to people, of showing them how life really works. But at the moment, in the conscious area, you seem to be operating at a slightly lower level. It's not bad. The Six of Pentacles is not bad, but it's a more it's more focused on reciprocity. So it's like you're holding yourself back because you don't want to stand out too much, and you want to keep a balance. The Magician is not balanced at all. The Magician is very straightforward, and the Magician is a representation of a strong-willed person who you really are deep within. Someone whose life purpose is to show people the illusory nature of existence. And the Six of Pentacles I see in this context as someone who is more interested in just blending in and being in a balanced, safe position. So there's definitely something to think about there, I think. I think you have a lot more to show to the world than you're doing now. The idea with the Six of Pentacles is, of course, giving and receiving, but giving just enough to keep the system running in a way. So it's more economical. The Magician is completely wild, and it's so powerful. It's a true leader that is hiding deep within you. Now, the Page of Cups as a conclusion of this reading suggests to me that it's important that you keep on focusing on staying open emotionally. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we've had Knight of Cups and Page of Cups before in our previous readings in important positions, and in card positions where it would indicate a form of action. But correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I remember. For example, in our first reading, or maybe the second one. But it indicates to me that you have realized that all of this, everything that is going on, can only work if you create and maintain genuine connections with others. And these connections need to be based in your emotional nature, your heartline situation. So you are on the right path. I know that you're already doing it, but a good way to really balance these kind of divergent tendencies here and there, and to really integrate the difficult things, and to bring out the shaman that is hiding within you. You need to take the first step. You need to offer your emotional openness to the other person, whoever you're looking to connect with. And these connections, this feedback, this lively exchange of emotional energy is what can really bring forth some positive change. So it's interesting because it's the only Cups card in this reading, and all the rest is kind of more cold and more practical. But it's a reminder not to forget about your sensitive side, and to dare to ask for help when you need it. I hope that you found this reading interesting. I definitely did. Thank you for the idea, and thank you for supporting my channel. And I hope to see you in my next video.